It's the last show of 2017, and what a show it shall be. President Trump signs into law his tax reform. Nikki Haley becomes our spirit animal and the mailbag. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. Oh, yes, so much to get to here on the Ben Shapiro Show. We finally reached the end of the year. We're here. It's upon us. And we survived. We all got here. You know, that was in doubt. All year long, it was in doubt. Over the last 3 weeks, it was in doubt. I mean, I know that I was expected to be dead at least twice. I'm not even talking about when I visited Berkeley. I'm just talking about the tax reform and net neutrality. But we'll talk about all of the things that are happening on this, the last workday, essentially, of 2017. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at Blinkist. So you're going to have some time over the holidays, but you don't have time to read a 500-page book. You don't. You have time to listen to a 15-minute segment that basically brings you all the points of the book, because that's all you're going to remember anyway. Well, that's what Blinkist is for. Instead of having to spend all your time wading through pages and pages of material, you're in the car anyway, you're there for an hour, you don't have my podcast next week, so what are you going to do? You're driving to grandma's house. What are you going to do all week? Well, this is why you need the Blinkist app. The Blinkist app gives you, in what they call blinks, 15-minute summaries of the main points of 2,000 of the best-selling nonfiction books in America, transformed into powerful information packs. Now you can feast your mind on key ideas from top best-selling nonfiction books, things like Flow, which talks about how to achieve more happiness in your work life, to Why Nations Fail, talking about how nations are run. Why Nations Fail is like a 700-page book. It'll take you a week to complete. But if you listen to the Blinkist on it, it'll take you like 15 minutes to complete. It's been selected as one of the best apps in America by Forbes, BuzzFeed, the New York Times, and it's used by over 3 million users. Right now, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/Ben right now to start your free trial or get 3 months off your yearly plan when you join today. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist, Blinkist.com/Ben to start your free trial or get 3 months off your yearly plan. Blinkist.com/Ben. Use the /Ben so they know that we sent you. Okay, so today, big day over at the White House. The President of the United States signs into law his ginormous tax cut. And everyone is very excited. So the President signs that into law just before Christmas, and then he says that he's going to have a working vacation. I hope not. I hope the President just takes the time off, lets the media fester. He doesn't need to provide them content. Let them chew on all of the good things that are happening because of this tax cut. So here is an additional list. We gave you a list yesterday of corporations that are now giving bonuses and raises to people and hiring more people because of the tax cut that just passed the Senate and the House and was signed into law by the President. In Texas, new Braunfels-based Rush Enterprises is planning to give each of its employees a $1,000 bonus after President Trump signs the tax reform bill into law. The commercial truck dealer said all of its approximately 6,600 U.S. employees will receive the one-time payout, which will cost about $6.6 million. In Wisconsin, Associated Bank said it would boost its minimum hourly wage to $15 and pay workers a $500 bonus. Their current minimum wage is $10 an hour, so that's a 50% increase. The company said that its moves would affect about 3,000 employees. In Idaho, Melaleuca Inc., which is run by Frank Vandersloot's a Republican, he said in a phone interview that his 2,000 workers would get a one-time bonus of $100 for every year they've worked at the company. They have about 150 employees who have worked there for 20 years or more. The average employee will get about an $800 bonus. In Hawaii, the Royal Hawaiian Heritage Jewelry, that they've decided to open a second shop. And this is going to happen all over the place. Right? This is going to happen as businesses decide they have more money to spend, then hiring should go up, investment should go up. Even if there are stock buybacks, maybe just your stocks go up. But it's good for the economy when people get to keep their own dollars. Why? Because they get to spend those dollars, or they invest those dollars, and you know what you want to buy better than the federal government knows what you want to buy. Now, the left has lost their mind over the tax cut, obviously. They just can't deal with it. And it's really interesting because it sort of betrays what they actually think of America and what they think of your capacity to keep your own money. So Elizabeth Warren, for example, she has an interesting take. Her basic notion here is the reason corporations are now giving bonuses and raises is because they're trying to propagandize to their workers, not because they actually like their workers or help their workers. They have nefarious motives. All of the corporations are essentially evil. In the end, they'll just use that money to line their own pockets and give themselves big bonuses. That's what they'll do. They're cruel and plutocratic. Here's Elizabeth Warren sending a few smoke signals of her own.
I'm not calling for the president's impeachment at this point.
I want to be absolutely clear. I am delighted when workers get more money. I'm glad when it happens at any corporation in America. Yay. But let's be really clear. if these corporations had wanted to do that, they already had plenty of profits to do it. The idea that this is trickle-down economics at work rather than just plain old politics is just wrong. The corporate CEOs have already told us what they're going to do with this money. I'll give you an example. Home Depot, right after the Senate passed the tax bill a couple of weeks ago, Home Depot CEO executive is interviewed and said, so what are you going to do with all of this money that Home Depot has? Because they're going to do really well on this. Was it we're going to raise wages for our employees? No. Was it we're going to hire more employees at the Home Depot stores? No. Was it we're going to build more Home Depots across America? No. They said what we're going to do is we're going to do stock buybacks. In other words, we're going to use whatever money comes in to pump up the price of our stock.
Okay, so what's hilarious about this is, number one, the Democrats were claiming for years that the stock market growth of the Obama administration was clearly a reflection of his underlying solid economy, except the job growth didn't keep up because the stocks were actually stock buybacks, right? Now she's ripping stock buybacks. Stock buybacks are terrible. But the idea here is that corporations are nefarious. They're profit-seeking. Isn't that awful? Now, what's hilarious is the same folks who think that corporations are profit-seeking and evil. Number one, I don't know if they've ever met anyone who runs a corporation, okay? I help run a corporation, right? I, along with my executive team, the people I work with, the president of the company and the CEO of the company, we run the company together. We actually do care about our employees. Right? If you went to our Christmas party yesterday, the only employee who got a bad gift at our Christmas party was Michael Knowles because he's a bad employee. Right? He got coal that I gave him for Christmas. But aside from that, it was in a Tiffany's box, so I guess it was nice a little bit. And one day, if Michael really puts himself under pressure, that coal will become a diamond. It was actually it was me exhorting him to work. But everybody at the company is relatively happy because we are interested in keeping them employed. And if they are good at their jobs, we give them raises. And if they are good at their jobs, we retain them. And if they're bad at their jobs, we fire them. People don't want to fire people, okay? They actually don't. People are not generally in the business of enjoying firing people. And corporations actually do care about their workers, which is why wages have risen in the United States in terms of what you can buy. They've risen in the United States continuously despite the death of private sector unions. Private sector unions represent something like 3% of the workforce now. They barely exist. All of the unions exist in the public sector where they're unionizing against the government. But in the private sector, people have decided that they're going to have better luck instead of unionizing, just going and talking to their employer about a raise, which is correct. But the idea from the left is precisely the reverse. Corporations are cruel. They hate you. They want to harm you. They want to use you as slave labor. But the government is benevolent. So it's benevolent when the government comes to me and takes a gun out and points it at me and says, give me your money. That's benevolent. But and if the government gives me my own money back, then that's bad. That's bad because, that's redistributing the wealth. But if a corporation is working and giving bonuses and keeping people employed, then somehow they're cruel. Now, here's the thing. I think most people are motivated by self-interest. The difference is that in a capitalist economy, my self-interest does not manifest as anything good for me unless I give something to you. Capitalism turns self-interest into what I've called forced altruism. The point being that I can be as selfish as I want, but if I don't produce a good or service that you like, I'm going to starve. Okay, that's the beauty of the capitalist free market system. Government has no such qualms. Government has no such issues. If government wants to survive, government can't go bankrupt. It will just bankrupt you. It will take all your money, all your children's money. If we're going to talk about caring levels versus corporations versus government, corporations care a hell of a lot more about making sure that you are employed as long as you are doing work for them than the government cares. The government doesn't care at all. The government will just tax the hell out of you if you earn, and they'll give you money if you don't, because the government is interested in your dependency or in sucking money out of your pocket. Those are the only two things the government is interested in on a fiscal level. Either taking your money or turning you into a dependent. Those are the only two things. Government is not interested in boosting you or giving you a hand up. The Democrats will say, we just want to give you a hand out because it's a hand up. And then they promote policies that make sure that people stay in poverty. They pay people to stay off the work lines, right? They want welfare increased so that people don't have to work jobs. This is why you have Nancy Pelosi saying things like, we want to make sure that you are not burdened by job lock. Like that you're not locked into a job you don't want to do. Okay, that fundamental difference between how you view private industry and how you view government undergirds this entire thing. And in a second, I do want to discuss what happened at the UN, because that was a major development over at the UN yesterday with Nikki Haley really taking charge. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at USCCA. So, if you're a gun lover, it's time for you to listen up. How would you like to head to the range tomorrow with a brand new gun? I know you would. It's Christmas time, folks. I know I would too. Well, my friends over at the USCCA want to get more guns into the hands of more responsible, law-abiding, armed Americans like you. So they are ending 2017 by giving you up to 17 chances to win your new gun every day. That's right, a different gun every single day of the week. Could be a Kimber, could be a Lilac, could be a Springfield. All you have to do is go to defendmyfamilynow3.com, defendmyfamilynow, digit 3.com, to reveal which gun you could be taking home tomorrow. It's defendmyfamilynow3.com. Remember, not a lot of time. The gun of the day will always disappear at midnight. This will be the last time I'm telling you the website. So listen carefully. It's defendmyfamilynow3.com, defendmyfamilynow3.com. Get your chance to win a new gun every single day. But do it right now. Defendmyfamilynow3.com. Go check it out. USCCA does a lot of fantastic work. You should register with them in any case. Okay, so yesterday, as I said, Nikki Haley acting as my spirit animal, and she was at the UN. The UN votes 128-9 against the United States moving our embassy to Jerusalem, to which we say, go to hell. Who cares what you have to say? Why in the world would I care that Yemen doesn't want us to move our embassy to Jerusalem? Like, Yemen can kiss our ass. Who cares? Answer, no one. No one. Okay, and Nikki Haley made that pretty clear. She basically looked at the entire UN and she said, guys, you think I'm standing here, like, caring about what you guys have to say? Welcome to America. Nikki Haley doing yeoman's work over at the UN. It's always weird. Whenever people speak at the UN, it looks like they're speaking in the bathroom at a Macy's. But in any case, here's Nikki Haley really bashing people about the head.
The United States is by far the single largest contributor to the United Nations and its agencies. When a nation is singled out for attack in this organization, that nation is disrespected. What's more, that nation is asked to pay for the privilege of being disrespected. The United States will remember this day in which it was singled out for attack in the General Assembly for the very act of exercising our right as a sovereign nation. We will remember it when we are called upon to once again make the world's largest contribution to the United Nations. And we will remember it when so many countries come calling on us, as they so often do, to pay even more and to use our influence for their benefit.
Cut them off. Cut them off. Cut them off. Okay, none of these countries that are voting against the United States ought to take their foreign aid for granted. Now, there are two types of foreign aid that the United States grants. It represents foreign aid, by the way, about 1% of the American federal budget every year. What's breaking the bank is not foreign aid, but we can use this as a tool. You know, we give like $100 million to Zimbabwe every year, like in human and development aid, in health and development aid. We give, true, it says like $135 million every year to Zimbabwe, which was until 5 minutes ago run by Robert Mugabe, one of the worst people on planet Earth. There have been studies that show that foreign aid does virtually nothing. When you sign a check to a dictator, the dictator takes the check, immediately cashes it, builds himself a new palace, buys himself a couple of new female bodyguards, and then goes about his daily business, by stripping the bodyguards and murdering his own people. Foreign aid, unless it is specifically channeled to the right areas, doesn't do a whole hell of a lot. And the UN doesn't do a whole hell of a lot. The idea of attaching strings to the system makes a lot of sense. Now, what's funny is that there are people on the left who don't believe this. So Philip Mudd is one of these people. He's his name is Mudd, literally. And he actually says this on CNN. He said that Trump was acting in the form of diplomatic prostitution. He said, let me be blunt here, Wolf. He said this to Wolf Blitzer. This is diplomatic prostitution. We're telling people, unless you vote with us, we're not going to give you money. And if your heart doesn't agree with American policies, we're not going to support you in terms of U.S. aid. That's not prostitution. It's just called diplomacy. Like, we actually get to attach strings to the checks that we sign to people. It's true everywhere, by the way. It's true in domestic policy, too. No such thing as a free lunch internationally or nationally. But what this really betrays is that there are a lot of people in the United States, living in the United States, who do not actually see the United States as a force for good in the world. They see it as a bad thing. They see it as a bad thing when we exert our power in the world. That's because there are really two different views of America on the world stage. View number one is that America is a big bully. This was Barack Obama's view in his apology tour early on in his presidency, that America is the big bully on the world stage. We're mean to people and cruel. We're overreaching. We're sort of a bull in a china shop. Sure, we try to do the right thing, but we usually do the wrong thing. And then there is the more traditional and correct view of America's role in the world, which is that we are the greatest force for freedom the world has ever seen and ever known. And the fact is, where American boots have set foot, freedom follows. I'm not going to talk about whether we should have been in every war that we've been in, but where America was present, there was freedom, and where America was removed, the freedom went away. This is true in Vietnam, where when we pulled out of Vietnam, South Vietnam, a free country, turns into a communist hellhole. So does Cambodia. And Cambodia, where the Khmer Rouge end up murdering 1 million people. Right? When we pull out of Korea, out of North Korea is still a prison camp 60-odd years later. Right? South Korea, where we still have troops, is one of the freest, most prosperous countries in Asia. Forget about Europe, right? I mean, all of Europe would be speaking German right now if it weren't for the United States, including Britain. So the idea that the United States has been a nefarious force on the world stage, or that we have strings attached, we should have strings attached because our strings are good. Right? Our strings are usually things like, we would like you to free up your press. We would like you to not oppress women. We would like for you to support United States foreign policy in strengthening our interests around the world. This is good stuff. The United States has never conquered nations to take them. The United States has conquered nations in order to replace regimes with better regimes. Ask how that's gone for Japan and Germany. The answer is pretty well. And by the way, it was going a lot better in Iraq until President Obama decided to precipitously withdraw from Iraq, leaving in his wake an Iranian-backed regime and ISIS in the west of the country, in the northwest of the country. So this view that the United States is being terrible by attaching strings to our funds, it's my money. For God's sake, it's my money. So if it's my money, then I get to determine what happens with it. This notion that the government has a role in taking my money and then spending it on whatever stupid thing Robert Mugabe wants to spend it on, it verges on taxation without representation, is the truth. Now, one of the things that's always interesting is the UN votes, as I talked about yesterday, statistically, insanely and routinely, all the time, they vote against Israel. And a huge percentage of all the votes they've ever taken in the UN General Assembly are against Israel. And the people who vote against Israel are typically, there are a lot of people who abstained yesterday. The people who voted against Israel are largely located in areas with large Muslim populations, Europe, or in the Muslim world itself. So the vote, I say, was 128 to 9. So 57 of those countries were Islamic. So half of them right off the bat are Muslim countries that hate Israel and don't believe that it ought to exist. And then there are another 50-odd countries, and some of those are in Asia, and some of those are in Europe. And what you are seeing is this alliance between members of the European left and radical Islam to condemn Israel. Right? This is where anti-Semitism exists. I've talked about anti-Semitism before on the program. There are a few different types. There's religious anti-Semitism, which is sort of Muslim anti-Semitism at this point. There's still some Christian anti-Semitism, but that's become far less of a problem over the last 50 years since the Holocaust. There is, or over the last 70 years since the Holocaust, rather. There is Muslim anti-Semitism, so religious anti-Semitism. There's also secular anti-Semitism in the form of people who do not like Christianity, do not like Judaism. They're okay with Islam because Islam makes them feel all multicultural and special and warm inside, but they're not big on the Juden. And this is coming out in Europe. So there's a piece in USA Today talking about Germany. Germany voted against the United States moving our embassy to Jerusalem. Again, none of their damn business. Again, they'd be speaking Hitler if it weren't for us. But the idea that Germany is going to tell Israel, a country full of Jews, right, about the same population of Jews, come to think of it, as were slaughtered in the Holocaust by the Germans and their allies, that they're going to tell Israel where to put their capital is beyond absurd. The anti-Semitism in Germany is on the rise. In Europe, it's on the rise. So if you wonder if the anti-Israel motivation is caused by anti-Semitism, the answer is yes. European anti-Semitism has long roots. Now, there's a lot of European anti-Semitism that's based off of new Muslim migrants and also secular leftists who believe that Israel is a nefarious force for Western imperialism. So there's a piece in USA Today. When telecommunications manager Mikhail Tanayev emigrated to Germany in 1998 from his native Russia as a teen, his Jewish faith didn't matter to classmates or neighbors. But now, he says, when I arrived in Germany, I never saw such displays, but now there are thousands of people who are burning Israeli flags in the streets. In 2006, Germany recorded 1,500 anti-Semitic incidents. That was a massive increase from previous years. According to a recent survey in Western Germany, 62% of Jewish respondents said they experienced anti-Semitism in their everyday lives. 28% said they were victims of verbal attacks or harassment in the past year. When I visited France, my wife and I were afraid to go in particular districts while I was wearing a yarmulke. I wore a baseball cap instead. When I was in London, I think I've told this story on the show. When I was in London, there was a situation where we went to Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. We were walking around, looking at all the statues. No Jewish statues, right, except for Albert Einstein. And behind us, there's a group of young Muslims. You can tell because the woman's wearing a hijab. She's surrounded by two guys who also look like they are from Muslim countries. and they actually walk up to the statue of Albert Einstein and start strangling it. And I figured, well, maybe they just don't like the theory of relativity. Turns out not. There's also a wax statue of Hitler, and while every British person there was walking over and strangling Hitler, these young Muslims went over and put their arms around Hitler like he was Uncle Hitler and began taking pictures. Anti-Semitism is on the rise there. It's on the rise in places like Sweden, not just because of radical Islam, but also because of a secular movement that sees religious education as backwards and non-progressive. Nordic countries maintain opinion corridors for acceptable ideas in the public square, and those opinion corridors do not include religious people very often. So anti-Semitism, anti-Israel sentiment, it may be true that not everyone anti-Israel is anti-Semitic, but everyone anti-Semitic is certainly anti-Israel, and there is pretty significant crossover between the two groups. Okay, well, as we continue, I want to get to the mailbag. I want to do a particularly long mailbag because it's a year-end mailbag. I want to give you a chance. But first, to our sponsors over at NatureBox. So, the holidays mean that it is time to do things, right? You need to wrap your gifts. You need to travel. You need to plan that travel. You need to brace for your relatives. You need extra energy, and that's why you need NatureBox. NatureBox has over 100 delicious snacks. All the snacks are made with high-quality, simple ingredients. No artificial colors, flavors, sweeteners. Just go to naturebox.com. You choose your snacks, and NatureBox will deliver them directly to your door. They add new snacks every single month, inspired by new food trends, professional chefs, customer feedback. You know, folks at the office, they particularly like the vanilla bean wafers, dried mango, and coffee kettle popcorn. We took a quick survey of the office, and those are the ones that are the most popular. There is no risk, by the way. If you don't like a snack, NatureBox replaces it for free. There's a reason that everybody around here is obsessed with NatureBox. Right now, NatureBox is offering Ben Shapiro fans 50% off your first order when you go to naturebox.com/Ben. 50% off your first order, naturebox.com/Ben. Also makes a really good Christmas gift. You have somebody in your family who's constantly on the run. naturebox.com/Ben gets you a 50% discount on your first order, which can be your Christmas gift to them. naturebox.com/Ben. Check it out. Live a more delicious, energy-filled life. Okay, so I'm not going to do things I like, things I hate, and then the mailbag today. Instead, I'm going to do lots and lots of mailbagging. We're just going to mailbag it up, yo. So we'll jump right in. We'll take your live questions as well. So everything will be fascinating, and we will go through as many questions as possible before the end of the year. So we begin with Michaela. She says, Dear Ben, every time the Republicans talk about taxes, Chuck Schumer comes out and explains that trickle-down economics have never worked. I've Googled this to try and find proof that it has in order to educate my brainwashed fellow millennials to no avail. Could you please explain in an objective way the actual pros and cons of trickle-down economics and when it has actually shown growth? So the reason that, first of all, let's start with a problem with Google. If you Google trickle-down economics, you are only going to get the failures of trickle-down economics. That's because it's a term that was not coined by the right. It was a term that was coined by the left. The right calls it supply-side economics. Look up supply-side economics on Google, and you will come up with a myriad of examples in which supply-side economics has worked. Supply-side economics is the idea that if you give producers back their money, they're going to produce new and better products, and that generates its own demand. Supply generates its own demand, basically. So if you generate cheaper product, not crap nobody wants to buy, but if you make product cheaper and better, people will want to buy it. If you invent new products, that changes the way people live. Everybody wants to buy it. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, nobody ever heard of an iPhone. Now everyone has one. That's because of supply side. Apple created a product. You wanted the product. You went out and bought the product. What the left likes is what they call demand-side economics. Demand-side economics is the idea that if you give a bunch of money to a bunch of people, that they'll spend that money and that will jog the economy. It won't jog the economy in the sense of making people's lives better generally because the products aren't going to get any better, right? The point being that, here's the great distinction. If you have $1 million, do you give it to, let's say that all else is equal, right? Nobody has $1 million. We're not talking about, we're not talking about equality now. We're just talking about jogging the economy. We're talking about efficiency. You have $1 million. You give $1 million to Bill Gates to invest in the building and invention of new product, or do you give $1 million, $1 to a bunch of people so they can go spend it on a burger? Which is going to make the economy better? The answer is you give the $1 million to Bill Gates. The reason is that Bill Gates is then going to create a product that makes everybody's life better. That will create a bunch of new jobs in a growing area where people are opting for the product. Now, that's not a case for impoverishing people, of course. But the point that I am making is that producers, businesses, change the economy at disproportionate levels, right? So supply-side economics has generated success after the JFK tax cuts. It generated economic success after the Reagan tax cuts in '81, generated economic success after the Bush tax cuts of 2001. There was sustained economic growth. People tend to forget this because of the crash in 2007, 2008. I mean, even Barack Obama maintained low tax rates in 2010 and 2013. So supply-side economics does indeed work. It's worked in Europe. It's the reason why Denmark, for example, is now cutting its own taxes. That's why European countries that have spent too much money are cutting their own taxes. So don't Google trickle down. It's a nonsense term made up by the left. The idea would be that people at the top of companies are just going to give the money to their employees. That's not correct. That's not how trickle down works, right? Supply side means that you're creating new products and services, and in the course of doing so, it creates jobs. Tina says, hi, my husband just bought me a Christmas present, a subscription to the Daily Wire. Yay. Well, thank you. Your husband's awesome. What a great husband. You should probably give him a ring. I do have a burning question. Are your kids as smart and analytical as you? In other words, is there hope for my children's generation? And how can we battle the liberal teachers, schools, school districts that are brainwashing our kids 6 hours a day? Well, as far as the brainwashing from the schools, I would suggest private school, homeschooling, take over your local school board. You really do have to be very, very involved. As far as are my kids as smart and analytical as I am, my 3.5-year-old, it's hard to tell for the 1.5-year-old boy, because that dude's just, he's just running around the whole time. I haven't seen a lot of analysis from him other than no, and also cheese. He really likes cheese. But aside from that, he's obviously a very smart kid. He's really highly developed in terms of language. My daughter is brilliant. Leah is super smart. My son may be brilliant. I just don't know yet because he's not speaking full sentences. She is really, really intelligent. She's 4. She's not even 4. She's already started her violin lessons. She can essentially read. She knows her numbers, and her thought processes are all quite rational. So she's very smart. Okay, Arya says, hi, Ben. What do you think Trump can do at this point to maintain the House and Senate next year? Okay, so what Trump can do is shut up. Right? Really, this is what Trump has to do. Trump needs to be quiet because if he keeps talking, it makes him more unpopular. Also, he needs to go out and talk about his accomplishments. He needs to go out and talk about how to unify Americans. He can have fun, but I think that it's a mistake for him to I think it's a big mistake for him to go on Twitter and use Twitter the way that he has the past year. I'm hoping that we're beginning to see some discipline from Trump. Listen, there will be losses in the House, but those losses can be mitigated if the economic climate continues to be good and if Trump can make himself less unpopular. He's never going to be super popular. He's never going to get up to 55% in the approval ratings. But right now, according to, I think it was Rasmussen this morning, he's up to 44. If he can get that up to 47, 48, he'll do fine. And Republicans will do fine. Okay, Emmanuel says, any word back about the Rosie harassment? So what he is referring to is that today, sadly, Rosie O'Donnell has some sort of sad sexual obsession with me, which is horrifying in every conceivable way. And she tweeted out, yes, I told you yesterday that she tweeted that she wanted me to suck her bleep, but her bleep was a male genitalia, which is weird. And I responded that she should stop being homophobic and sexually harassing people. Me too. And then she tweeted again today that she wanted me to lick her, which to which I tweeted, no means no, Rosie. And all victims have a right to be believed. Hashtag me too. And then I reported her to Twitter. Not because I actually want her banned from Twitter or suspended from Twitter. As I've said before, I didn't even want Milo banned or suspended from Twitter. I think that if I were running the place, I pretty much wouldn't suspend anybody except for explicitly violent behavior. But I do want to see if Twitter is just going to have a radical double standard, right? If they're going to ban people on the right for saying stuff like Rosie said. Like if I had said that to Rosie, is there any question they would have suspended or banned me? No question. None. Rosie says it to me, totally fine. So we will find out. Rosie has blocked me. So I guess that she has moved on from her sexual obsession. So that's sad. It's sad that, number one, it was unrequited. Number two, don't sexually harass people. Her parting shot to me was something to the effect of, she didn't even know who I was, but I look like a little boy. To which I responded, then why are you sexually propositioning a little boy? Because that's creepy and terrible. Okay. My Twitter was pretty fired this week. Okay, so Nathan says, hey, Ben, looking good today. Thank you, sir. Of course. He says, how would you define Zionism, and do you consider yourself a Zionist? Thanks, bro. Yes, I consider myself a Zionist. Zionism is the idea that the Jews deserve a state of their own in biblical Israel. I'm a Zionist because I am a Jew, and Jews, like a Jew who believes in Judaism, not because I'm ethnically Jewish. And Judaism is a Zionist religion that suggests that there should be Jewish rule in the Holy Land, and that it was a biblical promise. Now, what's interesting is people take that to mean that there has to be a kingship in the Holy Land. The Bible is, as I've said before, I think I talked about it this week in the Bible segment, the Bible is really ambivalent about state power. It is not big on the idea of theocracy per se, but it's the idea that there ought to be a Jewish state based on foundational Jewish principles. It's true for a few reasons, among them anti-Semitism and the tremendous outpouring of anti-Semitism that has existed throughout history, and also the idea that a country ruled by Jewish principles will be a good country, just like a country ruled by Christian principles in the United States is a good country. We're going to do a little bit more of the mailbag in just a second. So, but first, I think I'm going to have to break here on YouTube and Facebook. So let's do that. So for $9.99 a month, you can get the rest of this mailbag and things I like and things I hate. And I have a Christmas message for you that you're going to want to see today. So for $9.99 a month, you can get your subscription to Daily Wire. You get the rest of the mailbag. You get to be part of the mailbag. You get to be part of our show live. You get everything that you could possibly want in life, except for the thing that you get with the annual subscription, which is this, the very greatest. In leftist tears, hot or cold tumblers. It is the greatest. Okay, it's so great that for our Christmas gifts, we got everyone etched tumblers here at the office, and people were literally weeping.
I love it.
I mean, Austin loves it. Everyone loves it. And people were breaking down. They couldn't believe it. It was like that episode of Oprah where she gave away cars, except it was just a cup. But you can get that for $99 a year. You get the annual subscription, and it's pretty awesome. And the Shapiro store is coming, I promise. I know. It's coming. Okay, guys? Yes, it's coming. Okay, so you get all that for the annual subscription as well, $99 a year, cheaper than the monthly. And please subscribe at SoundCloud, iTunes, over at Google Play or Stitcher. Check us out over there. And subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, where we have a Christmas video out today that is simultaneously humiliating and hilarious. So if you want to see me dramatically humiliated, then go check out that Christmas video as well by subscribing to YouTube. We are the largest, fastest growing conservative podcast in the nation.